Hey YouTube, what's going on? So, quick reaction video right now. Tears of the Kingdom, the new Legend of Zelda game, has come out. And of course, I picked it up day one. I had made arrangements to play my games in such a sequence that I would get Harry Potter done, I would then do Tears of the Kingdom, and then I'd hold off and pick up Jedi Survivor, the new Star Wars game. I gotta be honest with you, I am so blown away by the new Zelda game, Tears of the Kingdom. I don't really know that I'm going to even bother with Jedi Survivor for a while. I can see myself playing this game for like the rest of the year. It was interesting because I wasn't super hyped for the sequel. I kind of had a wish list. Like, I was hoping Ganon was going to be in it, and I was hoping that it would be Ganondorf, and we'd get a human character. Mostly because I wanted a voice actor to actually voice Ganon. And so we got that, and I was happy. I was hoping that we could land on dragons, and they gave us that in spades. I mean, that's such a huge component of what we're doing in this game, which I love. Boy, do you need to land on dragons in this game. Like, oh god, it's fantastic. And the other thing I was kind of hoping for was that it wouldn't just be a recycling of the map and essentially the same bad guys and stuff. And boy, did they give us some new bad guys. Ironically, old bad guys. And I think that was the thing that really impressed me, was that, Breath of the Wild, in so many ways for Miyamoto, was a revisitation of Zelda 1. That same idea about the open world aspect of Zelda 1, where it was a non-linear game and you can kind of go do whatever you wanted, that was something that was very, very much a driving force in Breath of the Wild. In fact, when they did the demo for the game concept, they did it in like 8-bit format. There was an 8-bit demo of the original Zelda sprites doing what you could do in Breath of the Wild to kind of show everybody the mechanic. And so that was always kind of cool, and this game very much feels in that vein. Like, it's sort of like a reboot of Zelda. It's taking all the classical elements of Zelda and rebooting it and doing it in a way where we call upon those familiar things, but bring them back into this new story where everything's tied together and occurring in one. Late additions like the goddess Hylia is part of the game, but at the same time, there isn't a complete abandonment of the three goddesses and things like that, which is, the era that I remember. They've sort of replaced the three goddesses with the three dragons, which sort of have the same names as the three goddesses and things like that. So that's kind of interesting. There's also, they brought back the Lionels, which of course in Breath of the Wild, that was a callback to the original game. Now they have Gleeloks, and they're back, the three-headed dragons. And God, are they back too? Good Lord. It's just so very interesting. There's new mini bosses. Moldugas are used in new ways and things like that. It's a very fresh feeling game. The fact that there basically is an entire second map of the depths under everything, which is ridiculous. The sky concept we knew about, but I don't think any of us anticipated the depths being such a big part of it, with all the amiibo bits actually in the game. So content-wise, they really delivered. Upgrade abilities, the ability to fuse and make weapons with all the things you could collect in Breath of the Wild, which were essentially useless. That's a brilliant concept. The fuse thing is not only super cool because of the aspect of it, but that plays into the larger game mechanic. Zelda always innovates a game mechanic. The thing with a Zelda game is they don't make a Zelda game because they want to make a new game. They make a Zelda game because they really, really want to play a game in a way they've never played before, and so they build that into a Zelda or a Mario. That's always kind of been Miyamoto's thing. And so with this particular game, even though Miyamoto's not the director, he is still the creative force behind the game mechanics. And so this idea of building things seemed very out of place in the trailers and stuff. And now that I've gotten my hands on it, good God, it's so much fun. Like, it reminds me, I know a lot of people have brought up another game which is similar to that is more modern. This takes me back a little bit, at least a decade, a little more than a decade, maybe like 15 years. It was a game called Scribblenauts. And it was a 2D game where there would be a character and a brief little puzzle, like a cartoon, and it would be like, cross this gap. So you could write like the word bridge, and it would produce a bridge, you can cross the bridge. Or you could draw a bridge, and they'd go across the bridge. And so it was basically, they gave you a problem, and you solved it creatively. And the programmers had to program in all this knowledge and information. Like, if you wrote God actually appears as an animation and electrocutes stuff. Like, so they thought of like everything you could possibly write was in there. Poop, you write poop, there's a pile of poop that shows up. Like, it's just amazing all the things that was in Scribblenauts. And this was on like the 3DS or the regular DS, and you're just sitting there thinking to yourself, like, how did anybody sit down and come up with all this crap and then draw all this crap? Like, it was just such a massive game. And I remember when I played it for the first time, my friend Franz showed it to me, and he was like, dude, this game is going to change gaming. I'm like, dude, this is going to change gaming. And then nothing happened with it. It didn't change gaming. And I thought to myself, that's a shame, because that was the first game where the developers, they did not make a game with the solution in mind. They just created the problem, and then they gave you the tools, and they said, I think it's beatable, but you're going to have to try. And so that was all figured out during the testing phases. They literally just coded the problems and then gave you tools. There wasn't a specific way to beat this boss or beat this challenge or get from A to B. It was just, you can. It's possible, but figure it out. I really like that. That is what this game is. This is not, 1,000 people could play Breath of the Wild, and maybe half of them would play it the same way, which is still pretty impressive in terms of variance. But for the most part, when you watch streams and things like that, everybody kind of does it the same way. And then there are a few extreme people who got really creative and kind of broke the game, and it was like, wow, that's so cool. This game, everybody is playing this uniquely. Like, if you played 1,000 people played this game, 1,000 people are playing it differently. If you watch 1,000 Twitch streams, 1,000 of them are different. It's unbelievably adaptive and flexible, and it's just customizable, and it's so cool. It's almost like they built this game around people doing TikToks with it and people doing YouTube videos with it and streams with it to make it creative. And it's so very catered to the time we're in now, but it's just so imaginative. And I think that's what I really like about it, you know, because I love Twilight Princess. It's one of my favorite Zelda games. My favorite is Link to the Past, but Twilight Princess to me was the pinnacle of the Link to the Past formula, but it's a linear formula. Everybody plays Twilight Princess the same way. And as much as I love the look, as much as I love the weapons and the story and all the elements, and it's the pinnacle of that Link to the Past Zelda style, it was also the end of that, because that was really sort of where that died. And you couldn't really do that anymore because they'd maxed it out. It's never going to be that good again. And so they've been looking for a way to reinvent Zelda and make it something new. This is that. You know, I think Breath of the Wild was the innovative beginning, and that's why it was Game of the Year, but this is the perfection of that. And I haven't even really dived into the main story yet as much. I've gotten a few tiers and things like that, but I have just been getting gear, and yes, I'm using the item duplication glitches and stuff to make my time easier, but I like it. I like that it's an easy glitch to do, and I've been mostly using it to do Zonite so I can get a bunch of batteries. Like, that's what I really want to do, and have enough Zonite to build whatever I want with auto build. And I'm not ashamed of it. I think it makes my life easier and less stressful, and it allows me to enjoy the game more. Similarly, I duplicated a bunch of diamonds and stuff so I could have enough money to buy all the costumes that I wanted and stuff like that, and buy all the arrows that I wanted. And when I eventually kill a Lionel, I'll replicate all the Lionel stuff so I don't have to do 100 Lionel kills. But I just am really loving how much the game draws me in. There's so many side quests and things like that matter this time, which I like. And not like dumb quests like the Koroks. Like, some of those are fun puzzles, but I'm not going to do 1,000 Korok seeds. I have no desire to get the golden poop trophy. But it's fun that now there's another component with the Koroks, and so that's different. So I like all this stuff, and I'm really enjoying what the game offers, and I really do like how the world has changed, and it is a true sequel. The characters remember you. They came up with a good excuse as to why Link has no power again. And so that was kind of cool. I'm a little fuzzy on the time difference between when Breath of the Wild and the opening sequence happened and then when Link wakes up. I don't really know how much time has passed. But I don't really think it impacts the story negatively. I think it's still very enjoyable. I like that certain storylines that were developed in Breath of the Wild are panning out now with certain mini-bosses, and I won't spoil what that is. I do already know what's going on with the Master Sword and everything, and even though it's not my beautiful Sword in the Stone myth anymore, if you can't have Sword in the Stone, Sword in what it's in now, pretty much the next best thing, if not just as good. Kind of awesome. I mean, it is wonderful. I love that they gave us little treats like the Octo Rocks will repair weapons for you, or that you can split fusions in Tarrytown and things like that. It's everything you want in a Zelda game. It really is. I mean, could you argue, I don't know if it's in it or not, but I don't think it is. The Triforce isn't in it. And yeah, I would like the Triforce to be in it. I do wish that this game was just the ultimate game by maybe each dragon had a piece of the Triforce and you had to get it or something like that. But I would have liked, or maybe the Tears. I know that I saw the scene where, you know, Ganondorf becomes the Demon King. Instead of the Tears, if that's the Triforce, or maybe the Tears become the Triforce, and that's how we see the Triforce, or maybe the Triforce became the Tears, because wherever this is supposed to be in the timeline. I just want the Triforce in it, and I'm totally happy, and then I don't care anymore. That's like the one thing I could ask for that's not there, but all the main lore is there, and you know, and I don't really subscribe to the Hyrule Historia timeline thing. It was never Miyamoto's idea. That was something Nintendo America really wanted to do. Because they were trying to get in on the Marvel craze. They wanted to do the shared universe thing. And so Zelda tried to link all these games into a single timeline, even though they were never written that way. They were never supposed to be that way. Certain games do reference previous games. Wind Waker specifically references Ocarina of Time. And so those two are together. Twilight Princess specifically references Ocarina of Time. And those two are together. But Wind Waker and Twilight Princess are not necessarily together. They each just reference Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time was essentially a glorified remake of A Link to the Past in a way, and so those two games are similar, and therefore one doesn't necessarily take place after the other. Link Between Worlds is a sequel to Link to the Past, and so those games go together, and Majora's Mask is a sequel to Ocarina of Time, so those games go together. You know, some of the handheld games are direct sequels and go together. Seasons and Ages go together, and so I'm fine with taking them as micro stories in and of themselves, and if they reference another game and pull that lore in, totally fine. But as an Evil Dead fan, I have the ability to look at one thing, know that things happened from another movie, but those things don't necessarily canonize. It's just the story canonizes, but not what the visuals were because of IP and different things like that. So I don't have my issues wrapping my head around that. And I actually prefer it that way. I like looking at Breath of the Wild as it's its own thing. And all the Easter eggs to previous Zelda games are just that, Easter eggs, and they didn't necessarily happen. Skyward Sword didn't necessarily happen, you know, and things like that. Breath of the Wild is just kind of its own thing right now, and I'm cool with that. I also like the idea in Hyrule Warriors where all the games were kind of like their own reality or dimension or what have you, and then or universe, and it was a multiverse, and they brought them all together into one because they normally didn't take place in the same place. I was okay with that too. Like, that's fine by me, but I like to treat each Zelda as its own thing. This director, this writer, this team, you know, and that story is its own self-contained thing. But if you are a timeline person, I guess this is like 10,000 years later or something like that. I don't care, because every single Zelda game you play in ancient society had technology. Well, when the fuck did that happen? You know, like, how old did we get rid of technology at this point if this is now 10,000 years later and we're still talking about an ancient society? Because they even had it in Skyward, which was supposed to be the first game. And then they said, oh, an ancient society had technology. And you're like, fucking Christ, how old? Like, it's just ridiculous. You know, is it millions of years? Like, it's madness. And then, of course, they did it with the Guardians and things like that, the ancient technology, which is, I guess, different than Zonite technology. So, you know, I just take it as it is. Each story is kind of its own thing, and it's cool, and I dig it. But this game has everything a Zelda game should have that you could want it to have. It's brilliant. It's lovely. It's everything. It's everything that I want. And I would be shocked if it didn't win Game of the Year. I would also be shocked if it got another sequel. I really don't see them doing another one. I don't know what the next Zelda is gonna be, but I do not foresee Breath of the Wild's universe getting something else. I really don't know that a third game would do anything more for the series, but I don't know. But if this was the last, like, real Zelda game and then they went in a completely different direction, I wouldn't begrudge them one bit. I've always been more of a Zelda guy if it's medieval sort of swords and sorcery. That's the niche that I like my Zelda in. As they've branched into other cultures and things like that, you know, I get less and less interested because that's kind of what I like. But at my age, I don't think they make these games for me anymore. You know, so I'm curious to see what happens with Zelda now that this has done. But good grief, if this is the last Zelda game I ever play, I die happy, man. Like, this is the game to die on if the series ends. With the success of the Mario movie, I hope that maybe we get a Zelda movie, but 10 out of 10. If you don't have it, play it. If you didn't play Breath of the Wild, it doesn't matter. Play it.